She visited her mother without telling her husband. Then his car gave him away. By spring, all of it transfers. The foundation, the properties, her father's entire estate. Under my name. The voice came through the cracked kitchen window, like poison in the air, and Renata Harlow felt the ground shift beneath her feet. And then we decide what to do with her. A quiet facility, perhaps. We have years of documentation. The fragile daughter who never recovered from her father's death. Nobody will ask twice. That was Vivian, her stepmother. The woman who'd raised her since she was 6 years old. And the man laughing with her? That was Graham, her husband of 9 years. Have you ever discovered that your entire life was a lie? That the people you trusted most were the architects of your destruction? That every kind word, every gentle touch, every promise was just another brick in the prison they were building around you? Renata had, and she was standing outside that window with her 10-year-old son, listening to the two people who were supposed to love her plan her erasure. What would you do if you discovered the truth? Would you run? Would you fight? Or would you burn their world to the ground? Welcome to Mr. Cael Stories, where we bring you tales of love, betrayal, resilience, and redemption. If you're new here, you've just stepped into a story that will grip your heart and refuse to let go. To my incredible subscribers, thank you for being here. Your support means everything. If you're ready for a story about a woman who refused to be destroyed, a love that emerged from ashes, and justice that came with a price, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever had to rebuild your life from scratch? And smash that like button, because this story deserves to be heard. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. October rain had always smelled like endings to Renata. She stood in the doorway of her Providence townhouse, watching sheets of water blur the cobblestone street beyond, and wondered when exactly she'd stopped recognizing her own reflection. 31 years old, and she felt like a photograph left too long in sunlight. Faded, indistinct, barely there. Mom, you're doing it again. Miles stood at the bottom of the stairs, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his dark eyes too knowing for a 10-year-old. He had her father's eyes, sharp, searching, the kind that saw through walls and into the truth people tried to hide. Doing what, baby? Disappearing while you're still standing there. She forced a smile. I'm right here. No, you're not. He walked past her, close enough that his shoulder brushed hers. But you will be, eventually. He was right. He was always right. And Renata had spent the last 3 years learning to dread the moments when her son saw things more clearly than she did. Graham had left early that morning. Meetings, he'd said. Important ones that couldn't wait. He'd kissed her forehead with the same distant affection he'd shown for years now. A gesture so practiced it had lost all meaning. When did we stop being real, she wondered, or were we ever? I'm going to see Vivian, she told Miles, just for an hour. Can I come? You have school. It's a half day. He studied her with that unnerving stillness. And you shouldn't go alone. Miles, please. There was something in his voice, a thread of urgency she couldn't name. So she nodded, and they drove through rain-slicked streets to the Blackstone Boulevard home where Renata had grown up, where her father had died 12 years ago, where Vivian still lived like a queen in a castle built on someone else's grief. That's when they saw it. Graham's silver Audi, parked in Vivian's driveway, water beating on its polished hood. That's Dad's car, Miles said quietly. Renata's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Maybe it's about the foundation. The Harlow Foundation, her father's legacy, the charitable organization that bore his name and carried his fortune. Graham had insisted on managing it after they married. You've been through so much, he'd said. Let me carry this burden for you. She'd believed him. God help her, she'd believed everything. He said he had meetings across town, Miles whispered. Why would he lie? That question followed them as they parked down the street, as they walked through Vivian's side garden where the roses had long since died, as they approached the kitchen window that sat cracked open, Vivian's housekeeper's habit, unchanged in 20 years. And then they heard the voices. Played her perfectly. Vivian's voice, smooth as silk and just as cold. Renata froze, her hand instinctively reaching for Miles. 9 years, Graham. 9 years turning that grieving girl into the perfect obedient wife. Every word was a knife, precise and deliberate. Graham's laugh came next, the same laugh Renata had once found charming, back when she'd been 22 and drowning in grief, and desperate to believe someone could love her. She never once questioned why I insisted on managing the accounts myself. By spring, all of it transfers. The foundation, the properties, her father's entire estate, under my name. Renata's vision tunneled. The rain, the garden, the world itself seemed to contract to that single window, that single terrible conversation. Mom, Miles grabbed her hand, his fingers ice cold. And then, Vivian prompted, and there was anticipation in her voice, hunger. Then we decide what to do with her. A quiet facility, perhaps. We have years of documentation. The fragile daughter who never recovered from her father's death. The one who needed medication, therapy, careful supervision. Nobody will ask twice. You've been masterful, Vivian purred. I learned from the best. You spent years softening her up, making her doubt herself, isolating her from friends, convincing her she was broken. I just finished what you started. Their laughter braided together, obscene in its intimacy. Renata's legs gave out. She would have fallen if Miles hadn't braced against her, his small body suddenly the only solid thing in a collapsing world. We're not staying here, he whispered fiercely. We're not crying where they can hear us. Miles. We're going to win, Mom. His voice cracked, but his eyes burned. We're going to destroy them. The walk back to the car took forever. Renata's body moved on autopilot while her mind struggled to process what she'd heard. 9 years. 9 years of marriage to a man who'd been systematically dismantling her life, piece by piece. 9 years of believing Vivian's cool distance was just her way, that Graham's control was just concern, that her own growing sense of emptiness was just grief that hadn't healed. 9 years of being groomed for erasure. When they got home, Miles didn't go to his room. He pulled out a notebook, the one he used for advanced mathematics, and began writing. What are you doing, baby? Evidence. He didn't look up. Dates, times, things I've noticed. Noticed? I've been watching him since I was 7, Mom. His pencil moved steadily across the page. Since the first time I saw him grab your wrist at dinner, and you pretended it didn't hurt. Since he started going through your purse when you were sleeping. Since he changed the passwords on your accounts, and told you it was for security. Renata's throat closed. You've been watching all this time? Someone had to. That night, while Graham slept beside her, a stranger in her bed, a predator in her home, Renata stared at the ceiling and made a choice. She would not be erased. She would not go quietly into whatever hell they'd prepared for her. She would fight, and she would win. The forensic accountant came first. Marcus Pruitt, recommended by a lawyer Renata found through careful private research. He was in his 60s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, and when Miles handed him 12 pages of dated observations, he went very still. This is better documentation than most of my professional investigators manage, he said quietly. Who compiled this? I did, Miles answered. Pruitt looked at Renata. Your son is extraordinary. I know. And you're in serious danger, but you already know that too. Yes. Then let me bring in someone who can help. That's how Kieran Mathis entered her life. He arrived on a Wednesday evening, rain streaking the windows of Pruitt's downtown office, and Renata's first thought was that he looked like he'd weathered his own storms. Tall and lean, with dark auburn hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of slate, he moved with a quiet intensity that suggested he missed nothing. Mrs. Faulkner, he said, extending his hand. Renata. She took it and felt the calluses on his palm, the warmth of his grip. Just Renata. Kieran. His voice was low, deliberate, as if words were something to be handled carefully. I understand you need help untangling a complicated situation. That's one way to put it. His mouth quirked. Not quite a smile, but close. Marcus showed me your son's documentation. It's impressive. Damning. But we'll need more if we're going to build a case that protects you and your assets. What do you need from me? Access to your husband's files, records, correspondence, anything that can prove intent and conspiracy. He keeps everything locked in his study. Can you get in? She hesitated. Kieran leaned forward, his eyes steady on hers. I know this is terrifying, he said quietly. I know you've been manipulated into believing you're not strong enough, smart enough, capable enough to fight back. But I've seen your son's work. I've read the timeline. You are not the broken thing they tried to make you. You're the woman who survived them. And we're going to prove it. Something cracked open in Renata's chest. Something that had been locked down for so long she'd forgotten it existed. Hope. If you're feeling Renata's pain right now, if you're rooting for her to rise up and reclaim her life, leave a comment saying, "Fight back." Let me know you're with her on this journey. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This story is just getting started. The work began in secret. Late nights when Graham thought she was sleeping, Renata would slip into his study with the spare key Miles had found hidden in a hollowed-out book. She photographed documents with shaking hands, contracts, emails, financial transfers that painted a damning picture of systematic theft. Kieran met with her twice a week, always in different locations, always careful. Coffee shops where they looked like old friends catching up. Library study rooms where they spread papers across tables and built their case page by page. And somewhere in those careful meetings, something shifted. It started small. The way Kieran remembered that she took her coffee black with honey. The way he'd bring Miles books on subjects the boy was obsessed with. Cryptography, game theory, complex mathematics. The way he listened when she spoke, truly listened, as if her words mattered before he'd even finished hearing them. "You don't have to perform strength around me," he told her one evening. They were in his office, rain drumming against the windows. 3 months into building the case. "I already see it. I just want to see you." Renata looked up from the financial statement she'd been reviewing. Kieran was watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. "I don't know who I am anymore," she admitted. "I've spent so long being what other people shaped me into. Vivian's damaged stepdaughter. Graham's manageable wife. I don't know what's left when you strip all that away." "Then let's find out." He moved around the desk, not crowding her, just close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. Not because you have to. Not because anyone's asking you to perform, just because you deserve to know yourself. His hand reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek, feather-light. "You're extraordinary, Renata," he said quietly. "And I don't think anyone's told you that in a very long time." She leaned into his touch, just slightly, and felt something wake up inside her, something that had nothing to do with fear or survival, and everything to do with want. The first time Kieran kissed her, it was 3 in the morning in his apartment. She'd shown up unannounced, shaking, after Graham had cornered her in their bedroom with questions about where she'd been, who she'd been seeing. He hadn't hurt her. Not physically, but the threat had been there in his eyes, in the way he'd stood between her and the door. Kieran had taken one look at her face, and pulled her inside. "Did he touch you?" "No, just scared me." "You're safe here." He guided her to the couch, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "You're safe." But she didn't feel safe. She felt like she was coming apart. 9 years of controlled fear, finally breaking through the carefully maintained surface. "I can't go back there," she whispered. "I can't keep pretending." "Then don't." Kieran knelt in front of her, his hands covering hers. "We have enough. Pruitt confirmed it yesterday. We can file for emergency protection, freeze the assets, get you and Miles somewhere secure." "When?" "Tomorrow, if you're ready." She looked at him, truly looked at him. This man who'd walked into her disaster of a life and stayed. Who'd treated her son with respect and kindness. Who'd never once made her feel weak for being afraid. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Because it's my job." "That's not what I'm asking." His jaw tightened. "Because the first time I saw you, you looked like you were barely holding yourself together. And I thought, there's a fighter in there. And every time we've met since then, I've watched you prove me right. You're brilliant and brave, and you've survived things that would have destroyed most people. And He stopped, shook his head. "What?" Renata pressed. "I'm not supposed to feel this way about clients." Her heart hammered. "Feel what way?" Kieran's eyes met hers, and there was heat there, carefully banked but unmistakable. "Like I'd burn down the world to keep you safe. Like every time you smile, really smile, it's the best thing I've seen all day. Like I want to know every part of you they tried to bury. Not because it helps the case, but because I can't stop thinking about you." The air between them went electric. Renata leaned forward, closing the distance, and kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and hungry, and full of all the wanting she'd suppressed for years. Kieran made a sound low in his throat and kissed her back, his hands coming up to frame her face, his touch reverent despite the urgency. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "We should stop," he murmured, even as his thumb traced her lower lip. "We should," she agreed, and kissed him again. They didn't sleep together that night, though God knows Renata wanted to. Instead, they sat tangled together on his couch until dawn, talking about everything and nothing, stealing kisses that tasted like hope and possibility. "When this is over," Kieran whispered against her mouth, "when you're free and safe, and this is all behind you, I want to take you to dinner. A real date. No legal documents, no conspiracy theories, just us." "Just us," she repeated, and the words felt like a promise. The emergency filing happened at 9 a.m. the next morning. Within hours, Graham's access to the foundation accounts was frozen. By noon, investigators were combing through years of financial records. By evening, police had arrived at their townhouse with a warrant. Graham's face when he realized what was happening would live in Renata's memory forever. The shock, the rage, the dawning understanding that he'd been outplayed. "You," he snarled, backing her against the wall. "You did this." "Sir, step back." An officer moved between them. "She's my wife. She's not capable of... She's smarter than you thought," Renata finished quietly. "Stronger than you wanted, and done being your victim." The look on his face was almost worth 9 years of hell. Almost. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Miles testified with a composure that left the courtroom in tears. He walked the jury through his observations, his documentation, the years of watching his mother systematically destroyed. "My stepfather told me once that I was lucky he chose to stay," Miles said, his voice clear and steady. "That most men wouldn't want to raise another man's son. But he didn't stay for me. He stayed for money, and he would have thrown both of us away the second the accounts cleared. When he stepped down, he walked to the prosecutor's table and set down a photograph. Renata at 21, before Graham, smiling and whole. "That's who they tried to erase," he said quietly. "I hope you remember her." The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty, all counts. Vivienne, facing her own charges of conspiracy and fraud, tried one last manipulation. Tears, apologies, claims of her own damaged past. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the judge was unmoved. "You targeted a grieving child," he said coldly. "You spent years orchestrating her destruction. You will spend the rest of your life understanding the consequences." Afterward, in the courthouse hallway, Kieran found Renata standing alone, staring out a window at the city beyond. "Hey," he said softly. She turned, and he saw tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling. "It's over." "It's over," he confirmed. She walked into his arms, and he held her while she cried. Not from sadness, but from relief, from the sheer overwhelming weight of surviving lifting. "What now?" she whispered. "Now?" He pulled back just enough to look at her. "Now you get to decide who you want to be. No one else's version, just yours. And you'll be there? If you want me." "I want you," she said, and kissed him like it was the easiest truth she'd ever spoken. 6 months later, Renata stood in the newly renovated Harlow Foundation offices and barely recognized her own life. The foundation, her father's legacy, had been restructured, its stolen funds recovered and redistributed to the causes he'd actually cared about. She'd hired new staff, implemented new oversight, and thrown herself into work that actually mattered. Miles thrived. His testimony had made news, and colleges were already reaching out, impressed by the 12-year-old's analytical mind and unshakable integrity. And Kieran had become home in a way Renata never thought she'd feel again. He didn't rush her, didn't push for more than she was ready to give, but he was there, steady, patient, utterly committed to building something real. Their first real date happened on a Saturday in spring. Dinner at a small Italian restaurant where nobody knew her story, where she was just Renata, out with someone who made her laugh until wine came out her nose. "Elegant," Kieran teased, handing her a napkin. "Shut up," she laughed, and felt lighter than she had in years. That night, in his apartment, she finally let herself have what she'd wanted for months. They took their time, learning each other slowly, tenderly, with none of the urgency of that first desperate kiss. Kieran touched her like she was precious, kissed her like they had all the time in the world, whispered her name against her skin like a prayer. "You're beautiful," he murmured, his hands mapping the curve of her waist, the arch of her spine. "You're so damn beautiful." "I'm a mess," she whispered back. "You're mine," he corrected, and kissed her until she believed it. The proposal happened on a Tuesday. No grand gestures, no public displays, just Kieran in the foundation's library, dropping to one knee with a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. 52 years she wore this, he said, holding it up. 52 years of ordinary, extraordinary love. The kind that shows up every day. The kind that stays. I want that with you, Renata. I want every ordinary day for the rest of my life, if you'll have me. Miles, watching from the doorway, grinned. Say yes, Mom. Say yes to being happy. She did. The wedding was small. Close friends, chosen family, nothing like the elaborate affair Graham had insisted on. Miles walked her down the aisle and gave a speech that left everyone in tears. My mother lost a lot, he said. Her mother when she was born. Her father when she was young. Almost herself when she was in the darkness. But she found everything that mattered. Herself, justice, and love that's real. Kieran isn't trying to replace anyone. He's just family, and that's better than anything we lost. When Renata and Kieran danced their first dance, his hand warm against her back, his eyes holding hers like she was the only person in the world, she finally understood what love was supposed to feel like. Not possession, not control, just presence, just staying, just choosing each other, every single day. I love you, she whispered. I love you too, he answered. Always. And for the first time in her life, Renata believed in forever. 5 years after the wedding, Renata Mathis stood in her father's old study, now her office, and looked at the photograph on her desk. Miles, now 17, standing between her and Kieran at his high school graduation. He'd been accepted to MIT, full scholarship, with plans to study mathematics and eventually law. Going to put the bad guys away like you did, he'd told her. Going to protect people who need it. She'd never been prouder. The foundation had grown exponentially under her leadership. They'd funded shelters for domestic violence survivors, legal aid for those who couldn't afford it, educational programs for at-risk youth. Every person they helped was a middle finger to Graham and Vivian's memory. Every life changed was proof that she'd not only survived, she'd won. Kieran appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand, that soft smile on his face that still made her heart skip. Ready for dinner? He asked. Always. He crossed to her, set the coffee down, and pulled her into his arms. 5 years of marriage, and he still kissed her like it was the first time. I love you, Renata Mathis, he murmured against her lips. I love you too, she answered. Thank you for staying. Thank you for letting me. And in that moment, in that embrace, Renata understood that this was what they'd tried to take from her. Not just money or freedom, but the simple, profound joy of being loved for exactly who she was. They'd failed. She'd won. And she was never, ever letting go. Thank you for staying with Renata through every moment of this journey. The darkness, the fight, and the light she found on the other side. If this story moved you, if you believe in second chances and the power of choosing yourself, I need you to do 3 things. 1. Smash that like button. 2. Subscribe to Mr. Cael Stories for more powerful narratives about love, resilience, and justice. 3. Comment below, what would you have done in Renata's position? Have you ever had to rebuild your life from nothing? Share this story with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to fight back, to reclaim your life, and to find real love after betrayal. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember, you are stronger than the people who tried to break you. You are worthy of love that stays, and you are never ever alone in your fight. This is Mr. Cael Stories, reminding you that every ending is just a new beginning waiting to unfold.